You're listening to the 49 Carats Podcast, a 49ers Goldmine production with Stephanie Sanchez.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the 49 Carats Podcast. I'm your host, Steph. It is Monday, February 5th. It is officially Super Bowl week. 49ers, Chiefs, we've been waiting all year for this moment, and it's finally here. Joining me to talk about it and all the latest, greatest drama to come out of the last 12 hours or so is Weston P. Smith, as always on a Monday. How you doing today, Weston?
I'm feeling great, actually. I'm sure the nerves as a fan will set in probably as soon as we're done here and for the remainder of the week. But I feel great, and I feel like I am in the presence of excellence. Steph, I know you probably beat this drum all last week, but I'd be remiss if I didn't get the opportunity just to congratulate you on recognition that is just so well deserved for all of your efforts last week. To have your name come from the lips of the general manager during Super Bowl related interviews and talking about his players, his team. I hope you walked away from that feeling vindicated for all of the work that you've put in on for all of these years, just to get that moment. I mean, what's more special than that? I said it to you before. I don't think anybody is more deserving of that moment, and I'm sorry to take us down that path. But if I didn't get my chance to congratulate you on that, I'd be upset after we've spent the last 19 weeks together doing this show.
Well, I do appreciate that, Weston. It was definitely like overwhelming, a little unbelievable. The past few days, I was just coming back from the Senior Bowl and getting settled back into my 9 to 5. I was in a work meeting actually when I checked my Twitter and see that, freaking John Lynch mentioned me. And as you said, a Super Bowl presser, like what? Yeah. It's pretty crazy, but I always try to, remind others, I do have a pretty cool Nick Bosa impersonation and all that is awesome, but this is my baby right here, this podcast. So this means more to me than anything else. I'm glad that the impersonation is just a way for people to, become familiar with my content, if anything. And that's a cool thing about it. But yeah, man, it's Super Bowl week. We are here. I don't know about you, Weston, but I was sitting on the couch. I was watching the live stream of the 49ers arriving at Las Vegas. It happened last night, Sunday night, and it was just cool to see those guys. It was very uneventful and anticlimactic just watching them come out of the plane and into their buses. But I don't know. I just live for that kind of moment. You got to savor this team being back here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like you was glued to it. Not necessarily from a live perspective, but certainly went back and watched every video from every camera angle relative to that. So funny because to me, like those scenes and even now, like the pre-games in terms of like players walking into the stadium, like it's become such a fashion focused trend, right? And like I think I was more curious to see like who's going to wear the most outlandish outfit? And then I don't even know which two players it was. It was, it was dark. It was late when they got in, but you got guys coming on like in blue. I'm like, why are we not decked out in 49er colors right now? Like, I don't understand, but to your point, anticlimactic to say the least, but still just awesome. I think like when I think of those moments, I think of just being a kid. And when you're a kid, right, you're in your backyard, you're running around, you're doing things, you're pretending you are Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and like playing in the Super Bowl. And I think those moments make me remember what it was like to be 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And they're probably in all of their feels, right? Just even walking off the plane, understanding what awaits them and the opportunity that awaits them. It's just awesome. It's just awesome. And I can't help it, but like, hey, my team doesn't play in the Super Bowl every year. So I'm going to soak up every element of this equation. And that was just kind of step one in the equation.
Yeah, definitely. And then for the guys who have been here before, I think it's really cool for them to be able to get back to this moment because there's a lot of players who get to the big dance, who get to the Super Bowl, and they don't come back. Like they don't get a chance to, to try again. And the 49ers, at least a few of them, have gotten that chance. So, and there's a couple players on the team who weren't part of the 49ers before when they won their first Super Bowl. So like Charvarius Ward, for example, he has Super Bowl under his belt as a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. Logan Ryan, has a Super Bowl already. I know I'm missing, someone else, but things like that, it's awesome for the team to have a few of those cornerstone pieces of guys who have that experience. But Weston, I was coming into this podcast thinking, we should probably read up on some of the quotes from last. No, I was at the Senior Bowl, so I didn't really get a chance to do a show on them. Let's talk about it. But then this morning, there was some other stuff that came up, and the 49ers are a content machine. We don't have to try very hard to put out content. They put out the content for us, basically. And so what we learned as of this Monday morning is that the 49ers are not happy with the practice field at UNLV. That is where the 49ers are practicing this week in the lead up to the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs are practicing in the Raiders practice facility. Now, before I say anything further, I'll say this. For those of you wondering why the Kansas City Chiefs are practicing in the Raiders indoor facility and the 49ers are at UNLV, the Kansas City Chiefs are the home team for this Super Bowl. They are the AFC team. It switches every season, every Super Bowl. So next year, the NFC team is going to be considered the home team for the Super Bowl. So this year, the home team is the Chiefs, and the home team typically does practice in the hosting team's facilities. So that would be the Las Vegas Raiders. So that is why the Chiefs are practicing there, and the 49ers are practicing at UNLV. Last year, when the Chiefs were in their Super Bowl, they practiced at, I believe, Arizona State. So no one made us think about that. We didn't hear anything about the field for that one. This seems like a pretty isolated incident. This year, I know there were other mishaps last year with the playing surface of the actual Super Bowl. But for the 49ers, that is why they're kind of stuck in this scenario at UNLV. And the reason I say stuck is because the options going forward seem kind of slim. But let me rewind a little bit. The issue the 49ers have with this field is that it's soft. And it seems like it's more of a preference thing for the 49ers. They like to feel that it's a little more firm. And what the NFL did last week, they put down natural grass over UNLV's turf field. Now, I'm not like a field expert or anything, but I feel like, of course, it's going to be soft because there's no time for it to settle in or anything like that. And it's only been a week. I read also as part of this article that, God, I don't remember his full name, but he's J Jones 9 on Twitter. He put out this piece, and he mentioned that typically you go through all of this preparing of the field and having it approved back in December.
Yeah.
And the NFL was barely putting this field down last week.
Yeah.
So,
are you surprised? Are you surprised?
Am I surprised that, I'm disappointed. You are a multi-billion-dollar, business, and you're in the business. You should be in the business of keeping your players safe. And that includes having a, field in which players can feel safe playing on. And when it's that soft, that is concerning to me.
Yeah, there's a number of elements that are concerning to me related to this. I mean, but I asked you the question, are you surprised? Are you shocked? And it's just because, think back to the most recent Olympics, right? When they had problems with the Olympic Village and all this stuff. It's you put on these grand scale events where the entire world is watching, and there just always seems to be a stupid oversight of something, and this one just happens to affect the team that we root for. What I'm more worried about is why isn't there necessarily a true, if the planning for this begins in December, let's say, why isn't there a true backup plan? I mean, forget the field, forget the condition the field's in. Like, just think of the weather right now in Vegas, right? And I know it's not going to be all week, but you got one team who is practicing and played indoors, preparing indoors, right? And you have another team who's preparing for a game that's going to be played indoors, playing outside and practicing outside in the elements. Like, it's not apples to apples, you know what I mean? Like, it just feels different, but I just don't understand the logic behind this either, as to like, hey, we're going to lay natural grass on top of turf. I too, like you, am not certainly no turf management expert, and that wasn't what I went to college for by any means, but like, I'm pretty sure grass doesn't grow into turf, right? I know it's like temporary sodding, but like, how is it stay fresh? How does it plan itself and get the firmness, right, that a team might be in search of? It just feels like a really gross oversight that should be easily rectifiable by having like an alternative site or an alternative plan in case something happens logistically, which they clearly don't have. And then it just becomes an inconvenience for both teams.
Exactly.
Right? If the 49ers elect to split time with them at the Raiders facility, well, you know what? That also inconveniences the Chiefs, right? And that changes their schedule and their thing. So now this screw up doesn't just affect one team. It actually affects your entire product that the NFL wants to be out on this field with hundreds of millions of eyes watching this game. You know what I mean? Like this coming weekend. I'm not shocked. It's annoying. Like it feels foolish that we're talking about something like this leading into the biggest game of the football season. I don't know. But again, there's not a single part of me that is shocked, because the billion-dollar corporations, they always find ways to cut corners, and they always find things that are like to reprioritize things. And yet here we are again.
That's usually how they become multi-billion dollar companies, right? They got to cut corners and get cheap somewhere, right? So as far as the options that the 49ers do have, they did have a walkthrough earlier today. Now, the team, or the part of the team that was saying they weren't happy with the field, it was like the equipment team, guys who are, typically in charge of the 49ers field, things like that, groundskeeping, all that for the 49ers. So as far as the players go, this was their first time earlier today stepping onto the field. And like I said, they had a walkthrough. So it was fine for a walkthrough. But based on that, they're kind of going to figure out a path forward. Now, one option is bringing in new, firmer sod, but I don't know how much that really does for you. You could end up with the same situation there. They could continue practicing on this field, or they could try to work with the NFL and the Chiefs to figure out schedule. But like you said, Weston, that would require the Chiefs to then compromise a little bit and say, okay, we're going to practice here and have the facility from, these hours, and then you can come later in the day and practice these hours. So for both teams, it becomes a bit of a, disadvantage, I guess you could say, because then they're having to change their routine. As it stands, the Chiefs aren't, willing to change their schedule in order to accommodate the 49ers, just because they have an issue with the field. So you can kind of squash that as an option. And, I have no problem with the Chiefs doing that. It's like, that's their business, that's their practice facility. They don't want to change anything leading up to the Super Bowl. They don't want to uproot, what they have going on there. I get it. That's fine. It just seems increasingly clear the 49ers might just have to suck it up, for better or for worse.
Yeah, which is unfortunate, but I don't know what. So I know the concern around a shitty field and playing surface in general is just injury, right? And the health and the safety. But I'm also thinking to myself, like, well, how hard are either of these teams going at practice this week? You mentioned it in kind of the opening about like, hey, install was done last week, right? And they'll go through it and they'll dress rehearse and practice. But like, we're now 20 something weeks into the NFL season. Like, you're not putting your player in a position to injure themselves in practice leading up to the Super Bowl. So I think that is probably the most logical decision. And I agree with you. Like, Chiefs don't have to do anything. This is the NFL's problem, right? And if they want to play hardball, I would too. I literally would too if I was their team. Like, nope, let them figure that out. I'll take if it's an advantage, I'll take it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, we came here to win this game, but I hate to see the 49ers spend so much time worrying about this that it just derails like everything else, and this becomes like your sole focal point, your sole excuse, whatever it is. And I'm not saying it's not logical. I'm not saying that they shouldn't complain about it and there shouldn't be a gripe, because there absolutely should be. But I think at this point it's like, all right, we got to adapt. It is what it is. Let's change the focus, and the focus is on this game. And for all seriousness, like, putting your team in a position where they're able to enjoy some of these festivities as well with their families and everything else that Super Bowl week has to offer. Like, put it to bed. If you haven't come to a decision tonight on what the course of action is, that's a bigger problem than whatever the decision is that you're making in terms of like where you're going to go, how you're going to resolve this. I don't think bringing in new turf makes any sense. Is there just sod farms laying around Las Vegas that I'm not aware? You know what I mean? Like, where are you bringing this in? This sounds like a logistical nightmare to probably have the same problem when all is said and done. It's unfortunate. But you expect something to go wrong, right? you do.
Yeah.
Just got to roll with it.
Yeah, and Matt Barrows, who, put out this tweet earlier that the Chiefs, aren't really willing to change their schedule to accommodate the 49ers, also put out a piece on The Athletic a little bit before we went live here, and it says, quote, "The 49ers are leaning towards practicing at UNLV on Wednesday, though a firm decision on the week has not been made. Kyle Shanahan undoubtedly will be asked about the practice situation at Monday's media event." Yeah, the 49ers are probably preparing themselves for the media circus that is opening night of the Super Bowl. And Roger Goodell actually spoke had his presser, and of course was asked about the situation. He said they had 23 experts look at the field. All of them think it's a playable surface, just that it's softer than what the 49ers are used to. But look, to me, that doesn't say too much, because MetLife, for example, is deemed a playable surface, but we all know it's not the best playable surface. So I don't know how I feel about that. To your point, Weston, as long as the players can stay safe, I don't want this to be a distraction to the players either. I don't want this to be something where they feel like they have to practice different, where it's in the back of their minds. That's what you don't want leading up to the Super Bowl. There's enough distractions on these guys' plates in the lead up to this game. You don't need to create another. So I don't know how the 49ers handle this going forward, but it's either going to be suck it up, buttercup, or it's going to be let's just practice entirely somewhere else. And I don't even know where that would be, but I guess, we'll hear reports as they come in regards to that. Now, the one thing I really have had an issue with since all of this came out, and you kind of touched on a little bit, you don't want it to be a reason for any excuses. And I'm already seeing fans complain about this, and I'm already seeing things that people think it's like some conspiracy. Oh, the NFL showing us they just want the Chiefs to win. They didn't even know the Chiefs were going to be in the Super Bowl when they decided where they were going to, have this Super Bowl. And I'm sure they already knew the home team, like I said, the AFC team this year was going to be the home team, was going to be practicing at the Raiders facility. And the other team would probably be practicing at UNLV. It's not like they knew the 49ers would be that team. Again, it's just the 49ers have a preference, and they've become kind of, plain surface snobs a bit, because they've worked on their field quite a bit to kind of know, okay, this is perfect now. Like what they have over in Santa Clara, it's great. It works for them now. but they've had some snafus in the past.
No doubt.
So they've figured it out, and now they just don't like the surface. So I don't want it to be an excuse. I just that's the issue I'm having with people making it a larger issue than it is. And I don't want the 49ers to make it a larger issue than it is. I understand it could be a big issue if someone gets hurt, then that's catastrophic, right? Like that's really bad. But I mean, you can't make it bigger than it is.
Well, I'm confused here, Steph. You telling me that the host of the Super Bowl didn't receive the script of the NFL and they didn't know who was going to be the home team this year, right? Shouldn't they have known that the Chiefs were in the 49ers were going to be playing if this whole thing is scripted? I'm being facetious here. It's hard because it can easily be an excuse. It's just a matter of like the mentality. Do you not want to make it? I mean, we can lump this in the same category as like, hey, listen, injuries happen during the season. You're going to make that an excuse, or are you just going to, next man up, keep riding and go fight and go play? It's sitting right on the fence because this is certainly something outside of their control. Honestly, if it's that big of a problem, the NFL doesn't want to do anything about it, say fine. Screw it. We're going to pack up. We're going to fly back home. We're going to go practice in Santa Clara. We'll see you on Saturday. Right? I mean, that would be within their right. Now, they won't ever do that because they're taking the lure of Super Bowl away from the players and, this week, and the NFL doesn't want that to happen. But why isn't that not an option? Last I checked, what's that, an hour flight? That ain't like flying back across the country. You know what I mean? Like, if it's that big of a problem, say we're going to pack it up. Chiefs don't want to budge and don't want to let us in the facility. F them. We're going to practice on our home turf and we're going to come back. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, have that like mentality about it. You know what I mean? Like, make a decision and live with that decision and roll with that decision for your team.
There was actually like Bonta Hill earlier on 95.7 the game. He mentioned like he kind of heard about this whole field thing back on Friday, so he heard some whispers, and he mentioned like that could be one of the solutions for them, if nothing else, to just fly back to Santa Clara and then come back before the game. I mean, it's a short flight. I mean, I don't love it, but if it's that big of a deal, I mean, that's definitely something they can elect to do. So I found that really interesting. I guess we'll know in the coming day or so what the 49ers decide to do there.
You take every distraction off the table, right?
Exactly.
Anything that you're worried about that could happen during Super Bowl week, you go back to Santa Clara. Like, you don't have to worry about any of that happening. But not fair to the players. Part of this experience is the experience. It's not just the game, right? I say this to people all the time because they're like, why? Like, they feel like I'm calm for like my normal demeanor when it's like my team is playing in the Super Bowl. And I'm like, listen, I more than anybody want my team to win the Super Bowl. But getting to the Super Bowl is a massive achievement as well, right? Like, only 2 teams do it every season, and we can go down the line and start naming teams that haven't done it in forever or haven't done it in 20 plus or 30 plus years, right? So like, it's an achievement in itself, and they deserve to like enjoy this. And it's in Las Vegas, so it's not like when it was in New York City in my own backyard when it was like nobody even trust me, no player wanted to be part of that experience. The game's in New Jersey, it's in New York City, like this is in Vegas, probably the equivalent of being like the Miami-based Super Bowls or LA Super Bowls, like just gonna have a different feel to it. So they deserve to be there. I would never want them to leave, but if it's that big of an issue, just remove all the guesswork and take it back home.
Yeah. I guess just like I said, it's already been a huge topic this week. Just
already too much time spent on it, right? Is the way that
so that's
like
how I'm feeling, right? It's like that's more, and the players are gonna get questions about it in the media availability they have in a few hours, which they're gonna get asked about a bunch of useless things, in that session, but. Why the field? Let's just take that out of the conversation. And shout out to everyone who is in Vegas right now and heading out there. Shout out Vince. He's going to try to meet Rob and Levin. That's awesome. Say hello for me. And I mean, I'm sure that'll be fun for any fans who are in attendance watching, the 49ers answer some, questions, the media circus that is out there. That should be But the 49ers did their game install last week, and that was because they kind of wanted to act as if they had a game yesterday, like Sunday, like 1 week of preparation for a game in their mind. The Chiefs did the same thing. And I think that's smart for both teams. I'm sure that's more or less kind of standard, for teams going into the Super Bowl, because you have this week of this circus, this media circus, and you have these obligations really to do. So you're not always focused on practicing this week. It seems like it's 2 weeks of preparation. It's really not for these teams. I mean, there's
a couple days. It's not even a week. It's a couple days.
Seriously. So it's actually, pretty smart for both of them to prepare the week before. And then if they feel like there's any tweaks needed, they can do it then. Andy Reid, by the way, 30-7 coming out of a bye week. And I saw a report earlier, the NFL Network talking about both teams. They're talking about, the Chiefs and this record of Andy Reid out of the bye week. And they said the reason that he's so good is because he does the install in the first week and he doesn't change it. Like after, that is it. He's not, making little tweaks. Let's just do this. They're pretty much preparing and perfecting that game plan in practice, the 2 weeks basically. So, I mean, that's what you got to do, right? So I'm excited for the chess match.
Yeah, totally. I mean, listen, two high-level play callers in this game, but Andy's always been able to do that and take that approach because he's always played from the position of power in my eyes, right? Like, very rarely has Andy Reid been coaching the inferior team coming out of a bye, whether it's regular season, postseason, whatever it is. So it's the old utilage of, like, we've said this many times this year, talking about the 49ers, about, like, just go play your game. Your game is better than their game. Like, you dictate the flow of the game. And Andy believes that his team is better than the team he's going to play. So he can confidently put that install in early and not change it, because he can say, we're going to go out and play our brand of football. And 9 out of 10, that's going to be enough to win the game, right? Like, and we're going to be ready and be prepared. But you have to put it in that week before. Think of the logistically speaking, what goes on. You just saw a comment up on there about, like, media obligations, right? Like, that is definitely part of this. We all remember Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here so I don't get fined, right? Like, you have to be there. It's an exercise in accountability. But then you also think about it from the player's perspective. The week prior to departing for Super Bowl week, logistically, who's coming? How many tickets do I need? What flights are they on? Where are they staying? Where's the team staying? There's just a lot that goes into this that has nothing to do with football at all, right? So, like, you can only confidently check those boxes and handle that portion of the business trip that you're on right now, is if you get the football out of the way, right? And the football out of the way is like, let's get this install in the next 2 or 3 days. Let's all make sure we're feeling confident about it. Then we'll go handle the logistics. Then we'll arrive, and then we'll execute, and we'll fine-tune things in those small practice windows that you have the week of it. But, they're plus or minus a trick play or two here or there. There's plenty of tape on both these teams. Both coordinators know. Like, Steve Wilkes knows what Andy Reid wants to do. Spagnuolo knows what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. There's enough tape out there. Who's going to execute? That's literally what the Super Bowl comes down to. Listen, the Philly special, whatever it is, there'll be a trick play. Somebody has got something up their sleeves, I promise you that. But the rest is like, go play the brand of ball that got us here, and then what in-game adjustments are we going to make?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And yeah, Steve Wilkes, when he spoke with the media, a few days ago last week, he talked about, they were going back years of this Kansas City Chiefs team, and a lot of it is the same. Of course, there's some new wrinkles, but you gotta look at everything. And so, yeah, they look at everything, and you can imagine the Chiefs are doing the same thing when it comes to the 49ers. Now, going back to something we talked about earlier, the 49ers having some of these vets on the team, some of these guys who have been here before, in Brock Purdy, one of Brock Purdy's pressers last week, he was asked like if he's gotten a chance to talk to, some of those guys who have been here before and just try to get a feel for what to expect Super Bowl week. And he said he's talked to a bunch of them through the last few weeks and, even leading up to the playoffs and all that. Asked them about big games, moments, what their mindsets are. And so it seems like he's seeked out that help, right? He seeked out that advice instead of, I feel like sometimes, okay, like guys aren't on our team, I'll just wait for one of them to say something to me or just say something to the entire team, see what they have to say. But it really seems like Brock is trying to seek out that advice. And I really love that about him because not only is he like, we see it, he has like the mental fortitude for these kind of moments. Like, I don't think any of the Super Bowl stuff, all this media stuff is really going to distract him all that much. But I just love that about him. Like he's seeking out help. He said he talked to Kurt Warner. He's talked to Steve Young just about their experiences and stuff. And he's going to reach out to Steve Young again. So that's just something I really appreciate about Brock because I don't think every player goes out to actually seek that advice.
No. In the NFL, in these scenarios, first of all, this is, to your point, another thing to love about Brock and to show you that between the ears, like he is definitely the guy. Successful people mimic successful people, not just their successes, but their behaviors that, attribute to failures, right? And successes, and to learn from those examples. I think Kyle hit the nail right on the head, though, when you think about the guys on this roster that played in that 2019 Super Bowl, the 2019 season, 2020 Super Bowl. Fred Warner was in his second year. Dre Greenlaw was a rookie. Debo, rookie. Bosa, rookie, right? Like these were young guys that now have that experience under their belt and then years experience in this league of, high performance and success. And for Brock to go actively seek them out to understand, like that's what you want from the leader. Like I feel like Fred and Dre and some of these guys are probably also walking around like grabbing everybody they can, putting their arm around like, hey, don't F around when we're in Vegas, right? Like don't make the same mistakes we did or whatever it was. Like they got to go find them because they want you to be thinking like them. It's a great sign when your quarterback is already like thinking beyond them and wants to like get their opinion in the matter. It shows what everybody's talked about. And he's just mature beyond his years. He's not your typical 24-year-old kid. Like if I was a 24-year-old kid playing in the Super Bowl, you'd have to be worried about if I showed up to the game. You know what I mean? Like, let alone like seeking out advice. Like I know what I was doing at 24 and it was certainly not getting prepared for a Super Bowl.
Right.
He's just different. And stuff like that just builds confidence in the guy. And good news. Plays for the San Francisco 49ers. There's plenty of people that he can go dip from teams of the past to go figure out like their Super Bowl mentality and what they did. And Steve Young's a great place to start. Kurt Warner, even better, right? Multiple. When I heard that name, when I read the article, I was like, oh, okay. Like I like that a lot,
More of that, yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, definitely. And they kind of come from their paths to where they are or where Brock is right now. It's kind of similar. There's some similarities there. So even that could help in wanting to get the right advice from guys like that. Yeah, I remember Sherman like some months ago, kind of I think it was in the interview he had with Jair Brown, and he was like, yeah, like in that 2019 Super Bowl, some guys might have had a little too much fun. Like I don't know if those were exact words, but he insinuated guys had a good time out there. And I mean, sometimes that does kind of impact your preparation for the game. And like we said, the game plan has already been set. They're not beating a dead horse, going over the same things over and over in their head. There's such thing as over preparing, but like healing your body as well and making sure your body's on point too would require you to be in bed at like 8 p.m. Isn't that like when Nick Bosa says he goes to bed at like 8 p.m. every night or something like that? And I know damn well in Vegas, you got like you got events that start at like 11 p.m. openers to like shows or whatever they have at the clubs don't start till like 1 or 2 a.m. It's like, yeah, I know you're not getting good body rest out there if that's what you're doing, but
no,
I mean, the 49ers are staying far from the strip, so hopefully that deters
it's
some
easily accessible.
It is.
And listen, trouble will find anybody. You don't even have to be looking for it out there. But I think every team, this is their concern going to the Super Bowl. Chiefs are going to have the same concern, right? Like 50% of your team is probably locked in, right? The veterans that want to win this game or whatever the different mentality is. And the others, not even knocking them. So these are young guys with more money than they'll ever know what to do with. And opportunity literally is waiting for them everywhere that they turn their head, whether it's a good opportunity or bad opportunity. I don't know, but it's there, right? Like, I guess that's in the eyes of the beholder. And it's always a fear, like it's always, who was the player? Eugene Robinson. Do you remember that? Like back in the Super Bowl where like dude just didn't even show up to the game. You don't remember this?
Oh, when was that?
Oh my God. I'm Googling this right now. Like he just like legit like lost his mind.
Didn't show up. That's bad.
Jesus, I'm
that's
getting
what you don't. That's what you don't want.
No, but this is like Eugene Robinson. Where is it? I'm gonna find it.
It's the reality, though. I mean, it could happen to anyone. Anyone who isn't careful.
Oh, here it is. The night prior to the Super Bowl, Robinson. So this was Super Bowl 33. So we're talking about 97, 98. Robinson was arrested by an undercover police officer for soliciting a prostitute. Earlier that day, Robinson received the Athletes in Action Bart Starr Award, given annually to the player who best exemplifies outstanding character and leadership on the field, and community. After the arrest, Robinson agreed to return the award. The next day, without much sleep the night before, due to the incident, Robinson gave up an 80-yard touchdown reception to Broncos receiver Rod Smith, giving the Broncos a 17-3 lead. Like, that's the story you don't want to be hearing about.
Dude was like hungover for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And this ain't 1970s MLB where like the players tell you they played their best game like hungover, smoking cigs in the dugout. You know what I mean?
They're
like
different back.
A bump of the white powder to go out there and throw the arm. It's just different. People are built different.
It's a cautionary tale, and no matter what, like guys will hear every time, like, don't do this, like, watch out for this, don't get too crazy. But it happens every single year, and like you said, I mean, it happens for both teams, right? It's just about, okay, who's a little bit like smarter about it, who's a little bit more, maybe I shouldn't. I'll just say this, like, the club is gonna be there. The club is gonna be there the next weekend. I promise you, it's not going anywhere. You can catch a show, DJ Khaled, DJ set the next week or the week after that. I promise you, you're gonna be okay. That's my only. I know the players, I'm sure they listen to my podcast, right? Religiously, but that's my parting note to them before they embark in this Super Bowl. But, speaking of along the lines of all of this, the 49ers have been getting a lot of questions last week about effort, and is especially like on the defensive side, right? Because we've all seen it, especially the last two games in the playoffs that they've had against the Packers and especially against the Lions. Is it a bit of a red flag for the 49ers to be getting questions about effort like a week before the Super Bowl? Like, you normally wouldn't really see something like that. I just thought it was interesting.
I might be in the minority on this one where I'm like not trying to blow this out of proportion. It's not ideal that you're talking about effort, but here's the reality of what happened. You can watch any football game, and if you watch it carefully enough, you will see players take plays off. Wide receivers do it all the time. They walk off the ball. They don't sell that, it's a sell the pass when they know the ball's running, and defenses react to it. It happens every game throughout the game. The problem here is you put that on tape And it just so happened to be those effort plays that were taking place during big plays where the touchdowns, things are getting scrutinized. If that was a 4-yard gain and Chase Young just like walked by and like waved an arm at him and missed him, I promise you nobody would say a word about effort. But it's a big play and it's on tape. And honestly, the coaches are probably just like annoyed that they have to address this to the media. Like they saw it on tape. They saw it. And they addressed it in their room on the next day, right? When they all get together and go through the film, like the players were probably making fun of each other. Like, Chase, what was that, bro? You know what I mean? Like, this is how they clown on each other. But again, I'm not trying to blow it out of proportion. The 49ers don't have an effort problem on their defense. Just some of those things showed up on film and like during inopportune moments. But I assure you, go back and watch the Kansas City game. Against Baltimore, if you watch closely enough, you'll find somebody walking, you'll find somebody waving an arm, and you'll find something happening. What I do agree with that was said is Kyle's comments. And this is like football 101. If you're waiting for somebody else to make the tackle, bad things are going to happen. Or, hey, you play half speed, that's when people actually get hurt, right? So if you're playing afraid to get hurt, you're going to get hurt because it's a violent game that moves really, really fast. But the problem here is, again, Kyle's quote, if you're waiting for somebody else to make the tackle, that's the problem, right? Like, just go out there and hustle. And you know what? Kind of glad maybe this happened because someone like Chase Young, who we've been a little bit worried about over the last few weeks, like his performance is like, maybe that lights a fire. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe he doesn't care, but maybe it does because I know he's going to be out there, like you want him playing. Even if it's minimum reps, you want them playing hard on every rep. But the truth is like football is an exhausting game, right? And they all find moments to like catch their breath in game on the field. Like they give every ounce of effort, every single play. This isn't Madden where the fatigue is turned off and injuries are turned off. This is the real world. And players dog plays all the time. All the time. All the time. It just happened in the NFC Championship in inopportune moments, and that's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, and that's why it was a huge topic. And even John Lynch was asked about it. And based on all of the answers from Kyle, Wilkes, all of them, it seems like it was definitely addressed, maybe even sternly addressed, and so I don't expect it to be an issue. I actually like what John Lynch said as well, along with one of the Kyle Shanahan's quote was a great one. John Lynch said, effort is non-negotiable. And I mean, that's great. Thanks, Lynch. Like you said, what we were all kind of thinking. I mean, you, especially in the playoffs and these moments when it's do or die, like you have to put in effort. And Steve Wilkes said, as a team, I could tell you as a defense, it's unacceptable. And he went on to say that they talked about it and it's not their standard. What other people, I saw someone else spring up is D'Amico Ryans had his, I think it was Swarm, right? Was his kind of thing, Swarm. And then Robert Saleh had all gas, no brakes. They don't really have like a mantra, this year. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that's what's missing. It's like a mindset thing. It's like a identity thing. And this defense doesn't have the identity maybe it did in the past. It's still like a really good defense. And it's part of the reason why, they had the record they did and they're here. But maybe they just need a mantra for the week heading into the Super Bowl. Maybe that'll help.
I just feel like they take on the identity of their defense coordinator, right? I mean, Saleh and D'Amico were very similar and just very passionate guys, flying up and down the sideline. Swear to God, if you gave him a helmet, they go out there and be like, "This is how I want it done." You know what I mean? And Steve Wilkes is just not that guy. He's just different. It's a different approach. So I'm not like shocked that there's no like cliche, catchy like mantra related to it. I'm sure it's more of like, gentlemen, you're professionals. There's a different expectation here. Like, play to it. It's that simple, right? Like it's that simple. But as a fan, I want something to latch onto. Like I loved all gas, no brakes. I was like using that in everyday life, like everything I was talking about it. Like I just couldn't let go of it. But these are things that, you know, like also make me bring up like is Steve Wilkes the guy? Like, is he the long-term DC here? He's not going to get a head coaching job here. Like, are these little things going to contribute to, like, you know, when the players are like, well, we didn't have, like, we lacked that motivation. Like they, you know, I honestly think they used to look forward to, like, when they'd make a big play coming over to the sideline and the first person smacking them on the rear or headbutting them or whatever was their, like, defensive coordinator. The most emotion I saw out of Wilkes all season was on that one busted play. Who was it against on the sideline where he just like turned threw the paper. That was it. Like that's literally the most emotion you saw out of that guy all season. So it's just different. It's different. But hopefully they embody a little bit more of Saleh and D'Amico pregame.
It's hard to replicate the energy of Saleh and D'Amico because I feel like even now across the NFL they are two of two because they're like the only two guys that I think like show that much emotion and maybe they've even reeled it back, right? Because now they're head coaches. But I don't see a lot of defensive coordinators or just any coordinators really get down like that on the sideline and have that much emotion and fire up their players like that. But clearly something the 49ers were very used to. And I think it's been an adjustment. I'll just say that for them, it's been an adjustment. But yeah, I wouldn't mind the all gas no brakes being back for the week. Like let's bring something.
Let's bring it back right now.
I swear I was still saying that 1 year ago when it was D'Amico, and that wasn't exactly his mantra, but you know, I think in some way it kind of was too. Swarm. I mean, they're gonna have to swarm this week when it comes to tackling Pacheco, Kelsey, and Mahomes, right? You better swarm for those guys, and you know it's not done till it's done.
I'd like just listen. I like always go back to like what I was taught, right? And people, and I was coached by people who coach in the NFL right now, so I think I was a benefit of being coached by at a young age, being coached by guys that are like literally in the league doing this right now. And it was all about like, we don't care if you make a mistake, just make it moving at 120 miles an hour, right? Don't make it walking. And that's all they're saying. That's all D'Amico's saying. That's all Robert Saleh's saying. It's just disguised in creative language. All gas, no brakes, swarm. It's the same thing. Mistakes will happen. Nobody plays perfectly. Just make the mistake going as fast as you possibly can and trying to do the right thing, not walking on the football field.
Yeah, no walking. That's for the refs and, you know, the unathletic people like myself. But man, I mean, we have a hell of a week ahead of us. I know, you know, this Monday show wasn't like our usual format, but we had fun anyway because we're talking about the 49ers in the Super Bowl. And like I said, 49ers always give us some content to talk about. Like, we ain't even got to try. Make sure you guys like this video if you haven't yet. Appreciate all of you who tuned in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet because, of course, there's going to be a lot of content leading up to the Super Bowl. The 49ers are going to be speaking in a few hours with the media, so we'll get a lot of content with that. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Bully Ball with Jason Aponte on the Gold Standard Network and on my channel is going to be going up tomorrow morning. So tune into that, hit that notification bell so you know when I go live. Make sure you hit up Weston's channel as well. Weston, let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, on YouTube, we're talking football, real nice and simple. I'm not going to lie to anybody here that goes and checks it out. It's probably going to be silence from me for the remainder of the week as I get into my mental preparation to watch this game. But I hope the next time you see this Tony Hawk lookalike face, as we identified last week, is on a Victory Monday post Super Bowl here with Steph. I'm speaking it into existence.
I like it.
Because nothing would bring me more joy. You might see a grown man cry on a podcast. I don't know if that's ever happened, but it's possible that happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, Steph, I'm actually really looking forward to all this stuff. I go into like my shell, but that doesn't mean I'm not consuming everything that I possibly can. It's just like I lose words. I just want to listen and soak it
Yeah.
all in. And I'm excited for everything you got going this week.
Oh man, thank you. And last comment we'll get to here, Peter Lee. This 2023 season comes full circle. Niners began their preseason at Allegiant Stadium against the Raiders in week 1 of the preseason, and now they face the final test against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl at Allegiant Stadium. I love it. Full circle. And I got to remind you guys too, the last time that these two teams played in the Super Bowl and the 49ers lost, we went into lockdown. The world was chaos. It was an election year. It was a very forgettable like few years from that point on. The 49ers need to close the loop and they need to settle this once and for all. So they got to get this win. And yes, we'll be getting a tattoo of ladybugs, once the 49ers get this win. But yeah, guys, appreciate all the love. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like this video. But for now, have a good rest of your Monday night, folks. Peace.